Chiron is the wounded healer. He is the part of us that is continually experiencing some sort of unconscious wounding. And this part of us can have been precipitated by childhood. This could have been something that our parents repetitively experienced. This could be something that even us in our soul in past lives has experienced. And Chiron is called the wounded healer, as he himself is wounded and can never overcome his own wounds. Yet it is this emphasis and this acknowledgement of his wounds which led him to become an exceptionally good healer. There is a lot of association with natural medicine, alternative healing, anything that requires a deeper analysis of the root causes of pain. And when one can understand that everybody in this whole planet has Chiron somewhere in their chart, there's an acknowledgement that everyone on some level, whether aware or through there's some sort of subconscious patterning, every person on this planet exhibits some sort of pain. And a lot of our actions and behaviors and even the ways we think of ourselves, so the type of ego we've developed through whether it's inferiority or superiority, whatever it is, it's often this being born with the destiny of being wounded. And it might seem maybe not that fun, maybe not that great. No one, I think, really wants to be in pain and to experience a sense of fragmentation, but Chiron is one of the greatest figures, I think, that we're all born with when it comes to understanding our diversity, understanding we are compiled of many parts. It is understanding that if we're human and we've been born into this world, that we are born vulnerable, and we are always vulnerable, and it doesn't matter what tactics and what we choose to think and believe, but there's a part of us that is perpetually open, and as long as we're alive and feeling something, we are open to being wounded. And it's quite often the sign, and more particularly the house that Chiron's in any particular person's chart, that dictates the way in which we're continually wounded, or where our strongest wound base lies. Because the whole concept around Chiron is that of being the wounded healer and not necessarily healing our own self, because there's an incapacity to really do so, particularly in the case of ever losing a limb or having something that literally cannot be changed. The awareness, the self-awareness, and all information regarding to how to heal and overcome these wounds is something that Chiron energy is very much fixated upon, and it stands for this kind of healing. And before the healing process occurs, there is often some sort of cycle of addiction and pain. So this pain addiction cycle, and I'm not talking substances here, although that definitely can be the case. I'm talking any number of addictions. So any number of behaviors that minimize our most core part of us that experiences some sort of inferiority and pain, some sort of worth issue, some sort of something that we can never fix or overcome about ourselves. And with this inability to overcome, we learn ways around accepting and integrating this part of ourselves. And because especially with maturity, once, because there's only so long we can be in that pain addiction cycle. Once there's been some sort of snapping open, some sort of awakening as to this cycle that we all experience, but particularly our own, we are then born with, then we are given the opportunity to consciously find ways to not rectify. Like I said, there's not like an ultimate healing of that particular thing, but rectifying and integrating and coping around whatever issue it is. And with that comes a number of experiences, and usually a decent amount of information regarding these pathways through the pain. And over time, once one starts to feel more comfortable and familiar with this part of ourselves, we then, some of us are flung forward to try to help other. Some of us naturally will just do that in our interactions. A natural sense of acceptance and confidence allows others to feel that they're with whatever they've got, they can still feel that way too. But say in the case of fleeing forward and feeling like we want to help others, it is often through the dynamic of working with others around any number of issues that especially around issues that we are familiar with, that we over time become a more and more whole, or feel more and more whole. And we also were allowing that for other people. So I think Chiron is a beautiful part of human nature. It humbles us. It leads to us wanting to become self-aware and integrated. And it goes, I haven't even said, so it goes through all the signs, say 4 to 7 years per sign. There's not this set 4 years per sign or 7 years per sign. It changes. And it is an asteroid that sits between Saturn and Chiron. And its movement, it's a large asteroid, its movement between these two planets in particular, it's where it sits around the sun, its orbit is moving between that which is known and the conventional and what is seen, and it's moving between the unseen and the unexpected and the bridge to a more authentic, spontaneous self. And so as it's this figure, it pretty much plays that role of between what we know about ourselves and the world and becoming something more, and trusting our intuition and trusting ourselves, and it does definitely play a role, I think, in that process from this physical self and this physical reality into understanding there's something greater within, and call it our soul or understanding of our higher self, and its direct connection to something more. That's why its healing is to do with alternative medicine and things that require looking deep within the root of an issue and learning about that truly, and seeing that there's this familiar pattern that exists throughout individuals, and certain recurrent themes that show up, and all of it is a call towards self-integration and wholeness, which is Uranian. I feel self-actualization is such a Uranian principle, or a byproduct of operating under Uranian values. And so if we consciously choose to work with where Chiron is in our chart, with what relationships it forms to other parts of ourselves, so where it's Venus or our sun or any number of things. For some people, Chiron's very prominent. It might make aspect to a number of different parts of our chart and ourself. And the more prominent, the more you resonate with what I'm saying, and the more prominent that Chiron is by position or by aspect, the more that you won't be able to resist healing and resist integrating, because life will be too painful when you're separating parts of yourself and there's segregation there. I also think that Virgo is strongly affiliated with Chiron, and I think, yes, it definitely has Mercury as a ruling planet, but I think it's co-ruled with Chiron purely because Mercury it has the capacity for analysis and its mental capacity to dissect and to work through logically. There's this ability of Mercury, but with Virgo, it's usually focused on what's not working or what's broken or what can be better, and this whole perfectionism tendency. And I think that's Chiron and Mercury working together. There's this focus on or awareness of something that's not quite whole or right, and then there's this preoccupation with how to fix and how to achieve wholeness. And that's why Virgo energy can be so organized and fixated on things being clean and tidy and coming through with the appearance of things being right and pure, and because there's this felt sense of that's not how one is. And yeah, so that's another thing to ponder as well. So if you've also got a lot of Virgo energy, then I think that Chiron's also quite a prominent ruler of your activities and your interests and the way that you choose to move through life. Another thing I wanted to touch on, I've spoken for a bit longer than I wanted to, but another thing I wanted to touch on is that no matter who you bring into your life, if they tend to trigger you, if they tend to always just touch the buttons they're the most sensitive buttons, these people and these events, situations don't necessarily need to be considered toxic. I mean, they might seem toxic, and maybe you might need some room to move away and to self-reflect and analyze and heal. But these people with conscious awareness, these people can play kind of like the underdog Chiron figure, in that they're allowing you in these times to really reflect at what's really being triggered and why. And this self-awareness and integration process can be speeded up through this. And that's a cool thing. It can be quite easy to go off and self-reflect on your own, and it can be painful at times, but sometimes it's the confrontation with people that trigger us that actually gives us most capacity to accept and to understand these parts of ourselves and others. So maybe bear that in mind. I don't know why I thought to say that, so that's just an extra little bit of information. But yeah, if you have any more questions around Chiron, I'm more than happy to answer them. So just comment below or send me a message and I'll get back to you whenever I can. Thanks, guys.